We are also on Weibo. Please check us out for more great videos.
These may work for moral education, but they don't always make for the best history lessons. Welcome to Ms. Mojo, and today we'll be counting down our picks for the top 10 historically inaccurate Disney movies.
You're not free to make your own choices.
Sometimes you feel so...
You're just...
trapped.
Before we begin, we publish new content every day, so be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. For this list, we're looking at Disney movies that don't quite get everything right when it comes to historical facts. Though many of these films don't give their stories exact dates, we'll be doing our best to estimate the time frame and point out the apparent anachronisms. And we'll be considering both live-action and animated films.
Fairy tales can come true. You gotta make them happen. It all depends on you.
Number 10. Cool Runnings.
We could see history in the making.
Feel the rhythm. Feel the rhyme. Get on up. It's bobsled time. Cool Runnings.
We all know the story of Cool Runnings. It's a classic underdog story about an unlikely Olympic team overcoming the odds. Despite the plot being based on true events, though, all of the characters in the film are actually fictional, and many liberties were taken with the finer details. Perhaps most importantly, the team never worked with a coach previously involved in a cheating scandal. Many years after the film's release, one of the members of the 1988 Olympic bobsled team that the movie's based on, Dudley Tal Stokes, said, quote, "It's a feature Disney film. Not much in it actually happened in real life." Number 9. The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Most people know that The Hunchback of Notre Dame was not based on a true story, but rather on the novel of the same name by French writer Victor Hugo. So what could people possibly object to? Well, the story is set in real-world Paris in the 15th century, and as an eagle-eyed history buff might tell you, it features a number of anachronisms.
Just one day, and then I swear I'll be content.
For example, did you know that trapdoors like the one featured in the movie weren't used on scaffolds until the 18th century?
Those other guys that she could dangle all look the same from every boring point of view.
Yeah, neither did we. Thankfully to the untrained eye, or honestly anyone without a history degree, these issues are pretty much unnoticeable.
That's hitting a little below the belt, don't you think?
No, this is.
Number 8. Aladdin. This movie is not set squarely in our world, because, well, they have genies. Nor is it clear when the action is meant to be taking place.
Well, I feel sheepish.
Aladdin is set in the fictional city of Agrabah, but it is clearly supposed to take place in the Middle East. And yet much of the architecture, like the palace, looks like it belongs in India. Similarly, based on the apparent time period of everything else in the film, roughly the 9th or 10th century Common Era, Jasmine and Aladdin would have been far too late to see anyone actively working on the Sphinx. And his fez headdress? Let's just say he was way ahead of the times with that.
That fez and vest combo is much too 3rd century. These patches, what are we trying to say? Beggar? No, let's work with me here.
Number 7. Saving Mr. Banks.
Responsible is not a word.
We made it up.
Well, unmake it up.
This 2013 film may have been based on the true story of how Mary Poppins was made, but the filmmakers were pretty loose with their adaptation of the facts. Of course, for a family-friendly Disney movie, everything here had to be wrapped up in a tidy bow. But in real life, the relationship between author P.L. Travers and Walt Disney was much more complicated and didn't have such a happy ending.
Those Sherman boys have quite turned my head, but I shall not be moved upon the matter of cartoons, sir.
Oh, and those tears of joy you see her cry at the premiere? Based on other accounts, happiness wasn't what she was feeling in that moment. Number 6. Beauty and the Beast.
This is yet another example of the late neoclassic Baroque period. And as I always say, if it's not Baroque, don't fix it.
This movie from the Disney Renaissance is understood to take place sometime during the 18th century in France, based on many characteristics of the town Belle lives in.
Gaston, may I have my book, please?
How can you read this? There's no pictures.
Well, some people use their imagination.
The thing is, all of these happy villagers, with their simple provincial lives, probably would have had it a lot worse during that time.
I need 6 eggs!
That's too expensive.
There must be more than this provincial life.
You might recall that these abysmal living conditions actually led to the French Revolution not long after. In fact, the life expectancy at the time was well below 40, so Belle's father Maurice probably would have been long dead. Also, literacy rates were shockingly low, so everyone thinking Belle was so wacky for reading books was actually pretty spot on.
The whole town's talking about it. It's not right for a woman to read. Soon she starts getting ideas and thinking.
Gaston, you are positively primeval.
Why, thank you, Belle.
Number 5. Robin Hood. This is one of the few Disney movies that has a very clear timestamp on it, which makes it primed to be criticized for historical anachronisms.
And my job is to tell it like it is, or was, or whatever.
We know when it took place because King Richard, who appears in the tale, reigned for 10 years, between 1189 and 1199.
Long live King Richard!
You might remember the scene where Maid Marian is playing badminton. Well, that sport wasn't actually invented for several centuries after this story took place. Oh, and a farthing? That kind of coin was only minted as of the 1860s in England, more than half a millennium later.
Oh boy, 1 whole farthing!
Number 4. The Princess and the Frog. Many people praise this film for introducing Disney's first black princess, but it does make some missteps in its exploration of African American history. The movie is set in New Orleans in the early 1900s, which was in the midst of the Jim Crow era, but issues of race are largely glossed over in The Princess and the Frog. Tiana's dream of owning a restaurant wouldn't have just been lofty, it would have been nearly impossible, considering working conditions for black people at the time.
Which is why a little woman of your background would have had her hands full trying to run a big business like that.
Oh, and that ambiguously interracial wedding at the end? That likely never could have happened, depending on Prince Naveen's exact ethnicity, because interracial marriage was illegal at the time. Number 3. Hercules. So, the story of Hercules is based not on historical fact, but rather on Greek myth. But in various sources, his story has been well fleshed out, and it seems that Disney decided to skip over some of the more disturbing parts. For one thing, Hercules and Meg, well, they didn't exactly live happily ever after.
Meg! No!
According to the commonly told legend, Hercules was actually driven insane by Hera, Zeus's wife, and eventually murdered Megara and the 5 children they had together.
By law, I should execute you, but I believe a more fitting punishment would be to let you live, so you can walk the earth in torment.
Yeah, we can see why Disney didn't tell the whole story.
He's making this story sound like some Greek tragedy.
Lighten up, dude.
Number 2. Mulan. This movie is a favorite among strong-spirited young girls and boys, and was an inspiring Disney flick for many. Like Hercules, Mulan's story is based on legend rather than recorded history. And like some of the other entries on our list, Mulan isn't set in a specified time period. But considering it's supposed to be during the Northern Wei dynasty, it should be between the years 386 and 536. Many things in the movie, however, don't match up at all with that time frame. For example, the Great Wall of China as we currently know it didn't exist until the 15th century.
Now all of China knows you're here.
And Imperial City is similarly from a much later time period.
You don't belong here, Mulan. Go home.
Before we unveil our top pick, here are a few honorable mentions.
You're going to see the world, and everyone's going to want to meet you. Kings and scientists and famous writers.
Yes, Darwin and Kipling, Queen Victoria.
And I haven't met her, but I heard she's awfully nice.
My soul is spiraling in frozen fractals all around.
Number 1. Pocahontas. Anyone with a knowledge of the realities of American history likely could have anticipated this film ranking highly. Very little of this movie is based in fact. Perhaps most importantly, Pocahontas was only 11 years old when she met John Smith, and never had any kind of romantic relationship with him.
It would have been better if we'd never met. None of this would have happened.
And the ending to her story was not a happy one. she was held ransom by the English and eventually married another settler, John Rolfe.
It's all right now. I've taken care of it.
By the age of 21, she had died of illness. And those friendly ties formed between the settlers and the Native Americans, well, we all know how that one goes.
Why do you think those insolent heathens attacked us?
Because we invaded their land and cut down their trees and dug up their earth.
Do you agree with our picks? Check out these other great clips from Ms. Mojo and subscribe for new videos every day.